Band, only formed this year, and very, very promising young band. They certainly be a great asset to the cultural life of Donegal Town. Give them a big hand, give them a good reception. They'll be serious contenders for all the honours next year and the years after. This is what they call a flea show. lovely band, beautifully disciplined. And what about the 6-year-olds in front from the start here now? Lovely. They'll be a big asset to the junior miscellaneous section definitely next year. Are ready in the wings, they can come right in.
Ladies, so what do you want to do with senior accordions? Well, senior accordions is this order. The order is junior miscellaneous, but junior accordion will be one. Then senior accordion. That's the next one. And the senior accordion is worth creating like Murlog was worth and Drumkeen was a lot of share accordion or something.
Now this is a Johnston Band, ready to take the field in the first. This is the first of the junior miscellaneous bands. 3 bands in this competition now: St Johnston, Killea and Twin Towns. St Johnston, a relatively new band, but making a great name for themselves in competitions this year and later last year, and certainly well worthy of taking their place among the great junior miscellaneous bands. They have a big name to live up to, all these junior miscellaneous bands, a great name to live up to, because in the field of junior miscellaneous bands, Donegal has been supreme like for a long time at All Ireland level. So you have a big name to live up to. I'm sure you'll do that. St Johnston. Big hand with St. Bethan's Band from St. Johnston. Band that have been very prominent in the competitions last year and won a lot of trophies for themselves, and no doubt will win very many more this year. About 4 years in existence. St. Bethan's Band, St. Johnston. They were competing right through the summer. They won quite a few prizes, including 2 firsts in competitions. And this is their first time competing in the County Fleadh. We welcome them very much. I'm sure they'll be very important in the whole scene of things throughout this year and the coming years. So, the 5-year-old St. Patrick's Killea, and we wish you well in the competition. before we take the next group of that raffle. Now we have the Twin Town Band coming in here. They were formed about 3 years ago. They were Donegal champions in the novice section last year. They have 81 members in their band, and this is a non-denominational community band. And they were last in this section of Junior Miscellaneous. Big welcome for St. Eunan's Youth Band from Raphoe. Twin Towns band.
Well used to that.
lovely colourful show from the Twin Towns Band, and sorry then for mixing up with your neighbours. Twin Towns. Now that's our two bands in the junior miscellaneous category. And as usual, I do get an adjudication at the very end of the competition, and all the competitions, all the categories. So now we go on to junior accordion, which is the next category according to our draw, and we have one band here, Letterkenny Town Junior Accordion Band. If we could have somebody representing Raphoe and Cloughaneely senior miscellaneous here at the lorry, we would like to have them to arrange the order in which they will compete. Raphoe and Cloughaneely senior miscellaneous band leaders, or some representative from the band.
Who's the last band on the senior?
Unfortunately, that's what I said, there's two bands, but maybe unless they could play, like, we could sort of say, let them play, because they have to go, and, you know, like, say, like, when we'd have pipe and drum later on, like, and then one band could play, and they have to get, and then be the number one place on that See, after that,
after Drumkeen,
I'm going to put in one in the pipe and come back, Ranafast.
This is Letterkenny Town Junior Accordion Band. We of course have two bands in the town. Now we're into the senior accordion section, and there are two bands in the senior accordion section, and very, very keen competition between them. And of course, Convoy are also in this category, but by virtue of the fact that they are All-Ireland champions, they are precluded from taking part in county or provincial competition. That's not a rule of ours, that's a general rule in our organisation. And it's an honour to them that they go straight into the All-Ireland competition, so they don't take part here. They're quite entitled to take part if they wanted to give a performance, but they can't take part in the competition. But here in front of you we have St Patrick's, Murlog, and they were formed for maybe about 10 years. They've been taking part in many competitions and in flower competitions over the years. And last year they won the DMBA band competition in Felcara, and this year they've already won the competition in Ardara on St Patrick's Day. Senior accordion, St Patrick's, Murlog, Aurelia, Donegal. Big hand for St Patrick's Band, Murlog. Lovely show there, lovely display. As befits the senior band. You might be wondering like why the senior band, there's so many young people, all young people in it, but as I was saying to Eddie Mungy here, like we're very honest here in Donegal, and if 2 or 3 of your members go above the 18, then you have to go senior. I'm afraid down the country, you don't always get it that way. Sometimes you get people in the junior bands that are obviously not too junior. But that's why we introduced the rule that junior bands would have to have a list and give the age, the dates of birth of their junior members to ensure that they were junior. But these bands, now that band there and St Patrick's coming in, have gone senior, and not that there are very many of them senior, but a few of them, and for that reason they are senior bands now. But they'll give a very good account of themselves, either of these 2 bands, and give a good account of themselves at the next level. Now we have St Patrick's Drumkeen, keen rivals of Murlog, great keen competition between them every time they go out. In Falcara, for instance, like Murlog, were close runners, and St Patrick's Drumkeen very close runners up behind them. They've been formed, they've been this band has been formed about 7 years ago, and had a very good season in 1988. They had at least 5 first. And also another thing that I might mention about this band, coming from Drumkeen, of course, is a rural area, and sometimes more difficult to get them together for practices, but so they deserve a lot of credit for that. St Patrick's Drumkeen, Hasha. for the Bosco down St. Patrick's Drumkeen. Now the driver announced earlier we had, after that, we were going to have senior miscellaneous. But farther down the line we will be having here. Oh no, so drum more Ranafast. Being told Ranafast, tá sé de glagwyd parties na gymorth si sios yn ffla le blint on the rest. One should create na hearing, couple of Lenahain themselves. Sometimes they don't have any opposition at all till they get to Ulster, and then themselves and Cloughaneely, Fife and Drum Band from County Antrim are very keen competitors, and they've swapped the Ireland title around between themselves and Cloughaneely a number of years. So this year they're back competing because they're not exactly all Ireland champions at the moment, but they're aiming to be, and they're going that way. Drumkeen, Ranafast, Party Grove. Míle maithe Bhfuil Cheoil Ranafast there. Drum a mór mar Ranafast, so much míle. Drumkeen, just bandas and jazz and panama. Now later on we'll have Meenacross, pipe and drum competing in that section with Ranafast. But just now we'll continue with the order in which we arranged previously, and again we're very, very grateful.
Excuse me, where are the two bands? Where are they lined up? Where are they lined up?
I don't mind them. We'll sit there. Should be on that way. That's no competition.
Would you bray, Nish? Would you bray? This is the other band in that competition for fife and drum, and again I'm grateful to St. Gibbons Raphoe, who stood back twice to allow the order to be changed. I'm grateful to you. the Donegal Fleadh Cheoil Ranafast. And it's nice to see bands that employ tradition and instrument that was maybe part of the scene way back in the last century, fifes. We're grateful to see the new instruments and the new types of bands coming as well. It's great to see the mix. And again, I'd like to express a very sincere thanks to St. Eunan's Raphoe and to Cloughaneely, who allowed those bands to come in and compete out of order. How much feel we with you? Now we have the final competition, and this will be, I guarantee, a very keen competition. This is the competition for senior miscellaneous, and both these bands are new to the senior miscellaneous scene. They were both junior miscellaneous last year, and the band coming in, St. Eunan's Raphoe, are All-Ireland champions in the junior miscellaneous discipline. All-Ireland champions. They did us proud in Kilkenny last year, and they were replacing the next band in that category. So here you have, for the first time in the senior category, St. Eunan's Youth Band Raphoe, Pavesi, Killea. Cloughaneely, this time not junior, this time they're senior. Cloughaneely senior in the miscellaneous section. And as I said, themselves and Raphoe were very, very keen in competition all through last year. Well, might I say it, I suppose Raphoe having a slight edge in the competitions last year. But they're both now in the senior category, and of course the year before last, Cloughaneely were champions in the junior, All-Ireland champions in the junior miscellaneous section. So they have a high standard to uphold, and I'm sure they'll do that, just that. So, Queen Cal, Cloughaneely, Páirteann Ógasta, Sailor. Cheoil, Cloughaneely. That's the final band in the competition today. I think it'll be a very fine competition, some lovely performances, and bands that we can be proud of when they go to represent us, whether it be in Ulster, Ballyshannon for the Ulster, or in Sligo for the All Ireland. And surely some of these bands will be representing us exactly as I say in the All Ireland. We're grateful also to all the bands that took part in our competitions. We're honoured by their presence, we're delighted to have them, and we appreciate very much that they come at great expense to themselves from long distances to take part in our competition wherever we hold the flag, that they see fit to come and support us and take part in our competitions. We're very, very grateful to them indeed. For that last competition, which is the senior miscellaneous, that was maybe a new competition in the county because we didn't have bands in that category before, and we had to have a trophy for it, and we pressurised somebody to give us a lovely trophy, and we're very grateful to Colin Cars in Meenacross, who presented us with a lovely trophy for that competition.
Here it is. It's here.
This one here. I wish Colin was here to present that one when it comes to be presented. I don't suppose he is. Now it'll take the adjudicators a wee while to make up their minds about the overall situation in all the bands and all the competitions. Very grateful to you also who came along to support the competition. I think you got a good evening's entertainment, and well, we can be very thankful that the rain held off, and that while it was quite cool out there, and you can think of poor some of them wee girls that hadn't very much on them, it wasn't very hard for them to keep warm, but at least we kept dry anyhow, and that's something. And I think this is a good venue where the bands got plenty of scope to perform their marching routines and to give a good account of themselves. I think it's a good venue. We're grateful also to the people concerned in the John Bosco Club who put this venue at our disposal, and the facilities of the hall behind us at our disposal. Might I say that at this stage, since we're finishing up the plan more or less, that we're grateful to all the people, all the authorities that put the different venues at our disposal over the weekend, to the parish priest who gave us a school, to the people in the boys in the youth club, and to the people in the Cleary Hall, and this John Bosco Centre behind us. They're the venues that we used for the plan over the weekend. We're very, very grateful indeed also to our adjudicators, many of whom are gone, but two very important people who are here still and were working, some of them yesterday as well, Neil McEgan and Thomas O'Dear. Neil McEgan as Killea, and this Thomas O'Dear as Sweeney Manuel Hamilton. And they're very competent adjudicators, and they will give do their very best to give a very fair assessment of the talents and of the music and of the marching disciplines that we saw in front of us today. We had a lot of very fine bands, and you'll be seeing a lot of them. You'll be seeing at least most of them, since two of them in every category, two go through, if there are two in the category, at least two go through to the next round, which is the Ulster Fleadh in Ballyshannon towards the end of July, and then again two from the Ulster going through to the All Ireland in Sligo in the end of August. And we're very proud of the fact that our bands have in the past proved themselves not only the best in Ulster but the best in Ireland. We don't know, we can't prejudge the situation this year, but we're confident that when the All-Ireland final is over, we'll be welcoming back some of our bands as All-Ireland champions in whatever category that may be. We're grateful also to James McAllister, who supplied this fine lorry. We were quite comfortable up here. If you were cool down there, it was grand, and it's very important that you have a facility like this for such an occasion. We're grateful to James McAllister for the supplying this lorry. Grateful also to the stewards who manned the gates and looked after the bands and kept them right. We had to make a very quick decision because we realised that if all the bands come in here to this arena here, we would never get them all out again to get them in some sort of order. We thought for a time of putting them over the field across the road. That didn't materialise because that gate was locked, and we had to make a split-minute decision to send them down there. And I think in the final analysis it was the right decision, because you saw the bands only had to come in the arena, and they were interfering with one another, as sometimes happens when you have bands waiting to go on. Thanks again to the steward, to the band leaders, and to all the bands who cooperated very willingly with all the instructions we gave them, and with the stewards in all the requests. With a host of local artists as well from the county. Like when the results are announced, if you are then you're the lorry until you have signed that receipt and received the trophy for your competition. Not prejudging the issue in any way, I don't know who's going to win it, but I'm only telling that there will be 4 people anyhow who will be
Just read the card, I hope the culture will be as good when I give out the results as it has been now. So, very mil mago Renos. Tammy Lurch, where can we hear me? I'm okay, and I was Tomaso there, no, one Toratan shot here, I did all the walking about and all the observation of fine detail. Tomas sat back and took a great general overview of the competition, and I must say we worked very, very well as a team in almost every instance. We have quite a complicated situation to go through now, so I'll try to be brief without cutting any corners, you know, telling people exactly what I thought and what I liked and what I didn't like. The first band we had actually was a non-competitive band, but I want to mention the fact how pleased we were with them. You know, some of the senior bands we saw here today many years ago, or a few years back, we saw those bands in the same situation. setting out as good juvenile bands, learning their craft, out for the experience, you know, and you saw how well they turned out. I certainly wish all the best to the Donegal Town Youth Band. They have made a tremendous start musically. They've obviously got very competent teachers behind, people who know what's required, and are setting out along the right track. I thought everything was quite nice to know for a newly established band, and I wish them every good luck in the future, and I look forward to adjudicating them under competitive circumstances very soon. Ramago. Now, the second competition we have to deal with is the second group of competitors we had, which was the Junior Miscellaneous Band competition. We had 3 competitors in that, or 3 groups of competitors. I'm not too sure if I have my papers here in the order in which they played, but it doesn't make an awful lot of difference anyways. We had St. Patrick's Killea, very nice band altogether. March into the music. You know, this is something I noticed during the day, that people are inclined to skip the opportunity of earning a few points for marching into music. I don't see the point really in marching in without music, when they could be earning a few marks. You know, so if that applies to any other band, please take it on board and have a think about it. I thought the marching of the St. Patrick's in Killea was quite smart. You know, nice. One particular thing there was a 5-circle formation that I liked very much, finishing up with diagonals, which is unusual in that it's quite difficult to get into that position, but they did fairly well. One other point of a general nature, this 3/4 time, 3/4 time rhythm, which is old time waltz rhythm or waltz rhythm, it's a little bit slightly less than traditional, but I know it has become established in the marching band arena, as it were, you know, and we're not too critical of it, but we would like to see it phased back a little bit from its present status. Everything was played confidently with this band. Had a very nice idea there with the glockenspiel introducing the one particular piece, building up to the full band sound. They did that very well. They marched off to a lovely march, that it's kind of a Scottish music march, but it's a beautiful piece. Generally I was very pleased with that band. No great criticism. Possibly third, but I'm taking them second. We had Twin Towns. Came into a march, went into a slow air. I thought this band generally were a little bit static. Their music was very good, their arrangements was very well trained. They had a nice combination of dance music, march music, slow airs, or Carlin's concerto even. But I thought they were inclined to sit back and play the music rather than move, you know. And as you know, the band teachers, managers should realise that there's 25% of all the marks going for movement and marching. I think they might have lost a few marks here by sitting back and playing the music rather than moving to the same music. I didn't see any reason why they couldn't. They're very capable. They played a slide and a hornpipe combination near the end. I thought it was very good, and they had great movement there. And they certainly used all the space available and did it very well. The cooling was again, no movement in the cooling. Even though it is a found model, you know, they could really get up and do something. It was confined to the small little girls among the drum majorettes. And then they played a lovely piece at the end, the Gillamar. Very nice band. And then we had St. Boheen of St. Johnston. They had a silent march on again, you know. I was kind of disappointed there because they were a big strong band when they got going, and they could quite easily have been playing music coming in. But then that's a personal requirement of mine, you know, for which I would give a few marks, but not available there, I'm afraid. Smart changes of formation. The arrangement of the Found Mar was very good. Why not use some slow march formation to the Found Mar or the Found Mall? You know, it's just a little bit faster than a slow air. But it was a smashing opportunity for showing off slow march formation, but it didn't appear. Nice jig, circular marching to the jigs, very nice. Again, they used the waltz, just relax back a bit in that. They used the waltz rhythm twice actually. Generally speaking, I think this band took fairly simple formations and did them fairly well. I think they're capable of a little bit more. They're a good band. I thought them generally a band with good spirit. With the possible exception of the march, their selection of music was very good. Again, they used the available space very much. I think they should try to march on and off, generally speaking, with the Cheoil.
Results as you go along.
Okay, I've been given permission to give out the results as they go along for each individual section. So, in the 3 watch, some competition shin, Meenacross and 3 Bana Marshall I Gest. So the 3rd place goes to St. Johnston. Now, we had a lot of toing and froing between myself and Tomas, and Tomas gave me permission to say that we argued long, we argued technically, but eventually we came up with the following decision, that the 2nd place goes to the Twin Towns Band. By the process of elimination, you all know that the winners were the St. Patrick's Killea Band. Tunis Mashawat Alimata, Bizra El Legenagon. So, I think the next group we had were the senior miscellaneous competitions. We had 2 very good bands again in competition. St. Eunan's as Raphoe, agus Cloughaneely. So, starting with St. Eunan's Raphoe, I thought they had an excellent march on, very efficient style of marching. Come into a hornpipe then with a lovely musical arrangement. Found Mar, I thought the intro was a little bit busy, you know, like small little bits and pieces from the piano accordions, from the whistles, from the drums, from the glockenspiel or whatever, you know. It was a little bit slow in getting into its swing, but when it did, it was very good. You also must take into account that you have 15 minutes to perform, so any one particular piece shouldn't be overly long. I think they might have slipped up ever so slightly there. Again, the old-time waltz rhythm was there in its prime. If you could change that, it would be much better. They played 2 jigs in a row. This was very, very nice altogether, and nice, smart movement everywhere. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I thought that the band got a little bit tired halfway through there, that the same spirit and precision that they had in the first jig wasn't there in the second jig. You know, I know it's a little bit fast and all the rest of it, but you must concentrate and, you know, keep your tempo going, keep the rhythm going. Also, this band has a funny way really of going from one rhythm to another. Not funny really, but it's unusual in musical terms. You know, they have some notes that aren't really belonging to a tune, they're just transitional music. I hadn't heard that before, but it worked very well, but it's an idea I'm not too accustomed to. To play this slow march to strange music, like I said. Played a quick step, very nice. It had a very full band sound in My Lag and Love there, I think. Although when they changed the rhythm from the pure slow air thing, they went into something that was quite strange and not very traditional in sound, but it didn't make a lot of difference. Like, I'm being terribly technical and critical here, but I would prefer it to stay very traditional if possible at all. I thought with this band there's a very good level of practice and confidence from the whole personnel. And like I said, and generally speaking with all bands, the faults are relatively minor and they're easily repaired. But they're the sort of things that Tomas and Mahane have to look out for, because it's our job to try to differentiate as best we can. The second band in that competition was Cloughaneely, and they started with a slide now, which was unusual. Lovely rhythm, lovely choice of rhythm and grand music. Very good changes of formation for the duration of that slide. Very good marching formations to the jig. Well rehearsed movement there in the old-time waltz again. I thought the introduction for the cooling was a little bit weak. I think it was maybe a singleton whistle taking that introduction, and you know, it got a little bit lost. You know, maybe they would make that a little bit stronger by adding in a piano accordion or some other group of instruments rather than a solo tin whistle. Yes, I also noticed 2 of the what would you call it, maybe the drum majorette, the complete girl in charge with the big staff. They're inclined to put it on the ground occasionally, you know. I don't see any reason for doing that, and it's a little bit untidy looking. So if they just hand it to the nearest flag bearer or something like that until they have finished the process of conducting the band, and then gently take it back, I think it looks a lot tidier than putting the instrument on the ground. Very good movement in the polka. Very good arrangement generally through. But the other thing about the glockenspiel is becoming fairly common among these bands, and I would like to see it taken away from the percussion section of the band and used quite a lot more as a full instrument of melody. You know, it's quite capable, and it's a very strong sound, it has great carry, so it should be used a lot more as a full musician rather than to be stuck with all the bass drum and side drum and that kind of thing. So keep that in mind. I thought the little dance that the young drum majorettes did to the fast hornpipe was very good. I think they're very well trained with good simple movements, with very well executed. And they marched off quite well to the music, quite a good band. Now, the result of that competition, which was the senior miscellaneous competition, and as our Master of Ceremonies and Show Clement explained to you, two good bands relatively recently out of junior competition, now into the senior competition, and they have two great representatives from Donegal going on to the Ulster competition in Ballyliffin. But it was our day today to differentiate between them as best we could. So in second place we have given to St. Eunan's in Raphoe, and first place to Cloughaneely. Tomas has reminded me, and he asked me indeed beforehand, but I had partially forgotten, you know, that they, to really reinforce the idea that we're dealing with a marching band competition. Tomas got the idea really, and I suppose I concur in a way, that some bands were playing the minimum number of marches instead of doing a little bit more in the marchland, it being a marching band competition. We know that there are 40% of the marks for music, and therefore we ask for a variety with the minimum of 2 marches, but we don't mind if there's 4 or 5, 6 or maybe 3 or 4 selections of marches interspersed among all the other things that gains the mark for variety in music. Now the next competition I will deal with is the senior fife and drum. The first band we had was the Drummer on the Thursday. Quite a nice band, excellent style of playing, great spirit and heart in their music, and they're a band who have thought a little bit about the overall balance, you know, the sound, how it sounds to you as an update or to us as Rotori. They have thought about it. One of the indications of that being that the drum corps are extremely sensitive to the amount of volume that the fifes are putting out, and they play accordingly, and they certainly did today. I thought it was lovely. Some of their choice of music now wouldn't be great. I think the second tune, I can't remember now, was something like Kathleen, and it is a kind of little bit hackneyed, a little bit old-fashioned, you know. They could do a little bit better there for a phone mall going into a hornpipe, which was lovely. They should use the xylophone more. They had a girl there carrying the xylophone, but she didn't play an awful lot on it, but what she did was very good, but I think she could do a lot more. The same thing applies there, as I said already, about the glockenspiel. They played a jig going into a march, it was a jig march. A march with a jig, a 6/8 time marking on it. And they had very, very smart quarter band formations there where they just broke up and moved sideways and moved on again. I thought they did that beautifully. They have a very smart style of marching, very speedy and very precise band rhythm. I must say everybody shows great rhythm in that band. They played another jig later on then going into a wedge formation. That was very good. They played Molly near the end. Wasn't a great choice. I see if this band concentrated a little bit more now and getting a little bit more quality music, and maybe going back to Tomas's point about having a few marches, they may do a little bit better. The second band in that competition came immediately afterwards with Meenacross. Started with a march. Nice march on with fairly good spirit. The drumming was very good, but a little bit overbearing on the fifes. The band itself seems to persist in kind of standing and playing the march for the major portion of the march, and then doing maybe a circle formation or something relatively simple afterwards. You know, you've got to remember that this is senior competition, and you're looking back at these juniors, you know, doing fantastic movements type of thing, and I'm kind of expecting the same standard, or even better among the seniors. But I find I'm a little bit disappointed with the standard of marching with some of the seniors. This particular band now is a little bit static. They could do an awful lot more, I think. We played Donegal. Nice arrangement, very good choice, nice drumming and harmonies all through. They played a Prankster there, for instance, now with nice playing. Like, there was nothing basically wrong with the music, but there was a lot wrong with the formation. Like, they could be moving a lot more. Nice change of rhythm from a jig to the polkas. But yeah, this band also has the procedure where they play 2 or 3 tunes and then they stop, wait for some cue to continue on to some other process of the overall performance. Now, where you saw the junior bands there, they were quite capable of shoving in a few little transition notes that made the performance a whole over the 15 minutes, rather than stopping after 4 and stopping after 8 and stopping after 12. I would like the whole thing to be a continuous performance. The circle and counter circle at the end is very good, but fairly basic. Well, overall, generally with the Meenacross, I thought a good basic performance, but I think from a band at their standard they're capable of a bit more. So this was the senior fife and drum now. The second place I've given to Meenacross, which means that the winners of the competition are Ranafast. That only leaves us with 2 competitions, one of them the junior accordion and the other the senior accordion. There was only one competitor in the in the junior accordion, that was from Letterkenny Town. Played very, very well. I don't think I have any major complaints about them, except one particular choice, and I heard it from another band as well. It's a tune called The Fields of Athenry. You know, when you're talking about Ceoltas, the Ceoltas, I don't think would really qualify, you know. And I would ask these bands, no, there's no shortage of suitable music at all. I know it's popular, it's a lovely air and all the rest of it, but in the strict terms of traditional music, it wouldn't go very far, you know. So have a think about that one as well. They had a silent but very efficient march on. Nice attention to the detail of the march, good spirit. And they're a very relaxed band, obviously. They all enjoy, they all had a smile on their face even when they were playing, you know, so they're very good. That Fields of Athenry, you know, even with the rhythm change in the middle of it, there was a bit of it went on a little bit too long, the formation was very long. They had a very good drum exhibition here just before the end. Their slow air had a nice wedge formation. You know, their music was quite good and their marching was good. What I said about them, they have nice, simple, well executed formations, but sometimes you also get the middle of the band being terribly active, that the drum majorettes at one side and the flag bearers and the drum corps at the back, and they're relative to the whole band don't do a lot of movement. I thought they might have stepped up here, that only the middle of the band seemed to be moving most of the time. They were also a bit 2 minutes short, I think, in their timing, so they might have to add in a little bit of music there to the approximately 2.5 minutes just to get them safe. So without any problem at all to me, I award first place, or we award first place to the Letterkenny Town. And that was the junior accordion section. The final category is the senior accordion Killea Band. Killea Band, I keep saying Killea Band, I really mean Bonner Marshall marching band, of course. That's our final category. The first one we had, I think, I can't remember which was first or second now, but anyways, I'll talk about St. Patrick's at Murlog, the Deuce. They had a silent but very efficient march on. Again, I asked them for a senior and very well experienced band, why not play a bit of music coming in, you know. Had a very nice choice of a planksty there with very full movement. They had the same sort of quarter band formations that I saw in the Raphoe and the Ranafast band earlier on. They're very good and well executed. I also queried the traditional aspects of the fields of Athenry. The jigs, very nice style of marching, nice use of dynamics in the music. Right? They had an idea of getting soft and loud and soft and loud. It's a smashing idea and it works very well for St. Patrick's. They might have put in a little bit of movement in the second jig. They seem to be slightly static, but not a great complaint really. Moving on Iron is a fairly juvenile sort of tune now. You hear all the little kiddies playing it, you know, so in a senior band situation I'd be looking for a slightly more challenging choice there. The same applies to when you and I were young, Maggie, that tune, you know, it wasn't a great choice. Very static as well. They played it very, very gently from such a very big band, which was a revelation. They got a few points for that. They had, like I said, they have a good appreciation of dynamics. The polka, very good build-up in the polka, lovely and lively playing, and I would say much more of that required. It was lovely music there, very efficient changing of formation there. Eunan and Cloughaneely was very good, diagonal lines. I thought one side of it over towards this side of the Letterkenny and Cloughaneely, they were a little bit ragged on one side, but when I moved across to check the other side they were absolutely perfect. So if that particular band members remember which side or which members are over on that side, they're a little bit short of being attentive to each other. Generally speaking, had a very nice attention to spacing from them all. I think they were an accomplished and fairly experienced band, played very well. And the final band I want to talk about today was also in the senior accordion section, was St. Patrick's from Drumkeen. Silent again coming on. Nice tight formation in the jig march. I think the fact that they were so tight now, they were getting strength from being close to each other. The sound of the music was very, very good here. Now, that was from the music point of view, it was to their advantage, but from a marching point of view, it wasn't to their advantage. I thought they were a little bit cramped in their formations all the way through. They played a very good hornpipe. Carrickfergus was a straightforward arrangement, but very static again. You know, they weren't moving at all. You know, it isn't true that you have to stand or anything like that, in case you get the idea of when you're playing slow music. Nice drum rolls there, bringing the whole thing up to a very nice crescendo. Good straight lines. I thought the end of Carrickfergus though was very strange altogether. It was the first time I heard it played with a kind of a tango rhythm right in the middle of it. I would certainly recommend that that be scrapped forthwith and stick back to the slow air aspects of it. Finnegan's Wake, very good drum introduction. And the glockenspiel is particularly conspicuous there and did very, very well indeed. You know, I think that, I still maintain that's a very underrated instrument in the marching band context, and I think we could improve its status a little bit. They played a slow march then, the second one being Bull of Vogue, nice accurate marching, good ranks and files all through. I also thought they were inclined to stay in low keys here in the accordions. You know, it's a pity really, whether they can only play in C or they have become accustomed to playing in C, but the brightness of the music goes down. It gets a little bit dull after a while, you know, particularly in the low notes of the tunes. It's hard to hear it sometimes, so if they take it up a tone or two, it'll be very good. The finish then with the Sweets of May. Nice choice, well played, nice drum majorette work, and great accompaniment from the drums. Very smart playing indeed, and they marched off much, much better than they marched on. So if they can march off to music, they can march on to music, if I go back to one of the earliest points I had. Now, the results of that competition, which is the senior accordion and the last competition of the evening, and thank you for listening to me, we've given second place to St. Patrick's and Drumkeen, which means the winners are St. Patrick's and Murlog.
the Meenacross payment. They're going to do that. Very fine adjudication, very helpful to the groups, very helpful to the bands. And if any of the band leaders want to have a copy of the adjudicator's remarks, if you leave your name with Catherine McGlynn, the class secretary here, and pay 50 pence, you'll have them photocopied and sent on to you later on for your information. Now, could I ask that the leaders of these bands should come to the lorry for their trophies and signing the acknowledgement. Killea, Cloughaneely. These girls in front of me must be in every band that I call out. Ranafast, Letterkenny Town, and St Patrick's Murlog. Could I ask, is Colin Dillon anywhere there? Colin Dillon? Eddie Mungy says he thought he should kiss her when he presented the trophy, but it's too public. Representative of Cloughaneely. And again, as said, the first time this trophy has been presented. Sponsored by Colin Billing Cars, Meenacross. Another spring tour on the first year.
around and look over there. We know it all better. All the winning bands are going to gather over there now. All the leaders. Yeah. I know they're all agreed.
Right. Now, all the bands, going to say all the bands now, first of all, Ramina Michael is off the hop. Thank you very much for taking part in the competition, and the town is yours. Your town is yours, so we'd love to see you all march into the town if you assemble over here, if you assemble in this part of the arena, and march through the town while you give a bit of joy to the people in the town.
Oh, Mr. Wilson.